Malkia usually preferred pink to the dark purple Psychomancers were expected to wear. It wasn't so much the purple as the horrendous shade, and it did not go well with her eyes. Still, there was a time for looking how one wanted, and a time for looking the part. She felt that her testing was the time for the latter. So, for once, she willingly put on the hideously shaded robes with the unaesthetically pleasing question mark on its back. Why not an eye, she had always wondered. It would fit better with our hands. And played the part of a proper psychomancer. Normally she preferred the part of a proper woman. Striking fear into the hearts of men was so much more fun with painted nails and a glossed smile than with using magic to create literal fear, or even with the more brutish violence others preferred. In fact, she almost considered the latter two methods cheating, for any half-skilled psychomancer could do the former, and any sectant, of all things, could do the latter. It required a certain talent to do what she did, to cock her head to the side with the most courteous little smile plastered across it, soft arms crossed across her thin but not too thin frame, and practical shoes lifting her feet in ways that would have made it hard to walk for others, and speaking in a tone with just the right amount of sweetness to let her listeners know that none of that would stop her from destroying them if she was so inclined. It was a technique that not only got her much deserved subservience from the men of Psycho, but also much respect and scorn from its women, often both from the same individuals. These scornful women usually weren't so much rivals as amusements. Oh, there was the occasional threat, but she normally found them hilarious when they tried to bring her down and failed miserably, or proud after defeating a worthy foe. Regardless, she hadn't lost the social game in years. In fact, the only time in recent memory where she could truly consider herself diminished was right now. While she had always believed that looks affected attitude, she really couldn't blame this on the robe. After all, there was a reason the process was called the testing. Her mentor, Sven, came up to her, swaying his robes at the exact same angle every time. While she could do that in most dresses, she mildly envied him for his ability to do so in these ghastly drapes. "Are you ready?" Malkia smirked. "Of course. What fool would it be?" A series of screams answered her before Sven could. Elder psychomancers held their hands poised, the ever-present eye on their palms open, as a man who couldn't have been more than 16 burst from the doorway to the testing rooms. "The lights, oh the lights, how they dance, how they sing, how they stab and stab and stab and ask and stab and ask and ask and ask for more." He didn't blink. At all. A dribble of saliva made its way down his cheek. The eyes and the hands of the elders began to glow as the boy's ranting petered off, and an inexplicable calm seemed to overtake his figure. Well, he wasn't. Now, most other mentors would give you some sort of speech. I'm just going to say that the insane god won't grant you your true powers unless you can come out of here with your thoughts intact. Now go. Was that a drop of sweat on my brow? She knew for certain that she kept all other doubts off of her face. Horrible sweat glands. Why would they betray her so? Malkia, I will also say that I have seen many ordinary and even relatively poor psychomancers get through this test with no problems. That caused Malkia's smirk to widen. So I will have less than no problems. Sven rolled his eyes. Arrogant witch. As he walked away, Malkia mouthed, "Thank you," before regaining her composure and walking through that door. With the utmost of elegance, of course. It was slightly difficult to maintain that elegance when the door shut behind her and the room was filled with darkness. Still, she tried, though she suspected no one could see her. Appearance affected attitude. So long as she could maintain the appearance of confidence, she could create confidence. Still, it might be beneficial to create some of her own. Her powers were weak, yes, but an untested mancer was far from useless. At least, she thought so until her hands failed to bring up even the forewarning feeling that came whenever she attempted to do magic. What? She glanced at her hands, confused as to what they were doing. Trying to cast a different spell, and failing just as miserably, a brief bit of panic tried to worm its way into her conscience. No, you imbecile, do not panic. While they refuse to give us the details, we all know the ultimate test of the testing is whether you can keep a clear head. Panicking is the worst way to do that. She closed her eyes, which somehow helped with the darkness even though she could see just as little. and thought back several years to one of the 100 or so formal dances Psychomancer leaders loved putting on each year. An hour ago, she probably could have given an audience the exact name and reason for the dance in question, but for now her thoughts were too scrambled to look at anything beyond the important. A woman, another Psychomancer of course, had put on a good show of befriending Malkia over the last 2 weeks. It was actually kind of nice, until Malkia discovered the girl only did it with the intention of discerning a weakness to humiliate her at the gala. Now, she had always kept up a practice of demanding a companion to the dance, as all of her kind did, but she didn't tither about finding some worthy boy and asking him. No, she preferred them to come to her, after she put up the most intimidating front, of course. That normally took care of the unworthy ones on its own, so effectively that she often went with the first male to ask. When the false friend in question found out about this, she immediately informed the most disgusting and reviled male among the potential guests of this fact. It was kind of a stupid plan looking back on it, for she wasn't obligated to the system and could have said no at any time, but then again, had the girl been one of her smart enemies, Malkia would have remembered her name. However, Malkia said yes, immediately prodded the boy's mind with both magic and without, discovered how to keep him completely under her control without the slightest spell, and cleaned him up within a matter of days. Fortunately, it turned out he was a good dancer, and under her direction he was the most charming and handsome boy at the ball, the envy of at least half the girls there, including the false friend, which of course was the only reason she went through with it in the first place. You could have gotten angry, but you didn't. You didn't hesitate, you planned. You didn't give in, you turned it around. You looked at the situation and saw how to benefit from it. That is how you win. When she opened her eyes again, the panic was gone. She had no idea why her magic wasn't working, but she would find out, and by Akmar, she would do it spectacularly. Her only regret in that entire scenario was opening her eyes, for a massive burst of light struck the entire room, sending her dilated pupils reeling with pain. A Psychomancer, his face covered, grabbed her face and started to pour some strange liquid into her visual organs, which stung for a brief second. It confused her, until she realized they were no longer adjusting to the light. The pain when she opened her lids was surprisingly difficult to bear, and it left her with a massive headache. "Wait a minute," the strange man said. "You're magicless." Rather than dignify that ridiculous accusation with a response, she showed him her hands. "I'm sorry. I thought you were a Psychomancer." "How could no one have noticed your hands have no eyes?" "What?" Malkia opened her eyes again, fighting back the pain, to little avail, and through her blurred vision was barely able to make up the fact that she was, in fact, looking at the mundane hand of a magicless. Panic started to return. No, this cannot be. There were eyes there only a few minutes ago. Malkia had known from childhood that she was blessed with the gift of the insane god, and the idea that she had mundane hands of a magicless was something she hadn't considered worth checking in years. But here it was, clear as day, a pair of hands that couldn't belong to a Psychomancer. Oh, I get it. Someone must have altered your mind to make you think you were a mancer. I'm sorry, it happens. Look, us blessed beings sometimes enjoy our fun, and as all your kind know, you can't stop us from having our fun. We're too important, and you're too defenseless for the world to work any other way. The man was already speaking in the condescending, exasperated parent-to-child tone Mancers use when explaining important truths to their inferiors. Could it be true? Malkia thought back to all the times when she avoided using magic even when it would have been helpful. She had always considered it a mark of pride, something she didn't need. But what if it was her mind altering reality to match the illusion this cruel Psychomancer had created? What if she truly was a pathetic magicless, dependent on Mancers for survival and unable to cast the most childish of spells? But for so long. It was impossible to alter memories. It was possible to alter memories. She had seen her parents do it before in interrogations. They both worked to root out spies from other Mancer-nations. However, these memories were dismissed or returned to normal naturally once the spell lost its support. Maybe a harrowed Psychomancer at full power could create such a permanent shift in thought, but it would be illegal. One of the Psychomancer's greatest taboos, in fact. One that was enforced with vengeance, with impossibility. But why would someone risk their livelihood to play a joke on a magicless girl? It's a trick. The searing pain in her eyes had to be making her thoughts as blurry as her vision, for she had somehow forgotten that she was being tested by the craftiest illusionists in the world. Just remember that, and whatever they throw at you next will be nothing. She closed them to fight something of the pain as her heartbeat returned to normal, only to be tossed to the ground by some unseen force. Damn it, you pathetic little girl! Why are you such a burden? Malkia was briefly confused. She hadn't heard her father's voice in months, not since she had run screaming from her house because... Because why? She actually couldn't remember. Straining to keep her eyes closed, she fumbled about when the hand reached out to her and offered to hold her back up. I'm sorry, Malkia. I really am. I don't know why I did that. It's just you can be so frustrating, and with this problem of yours, well, I did what I had to do. Something itched at the back of her mind. There was indeed some problem she had had to face at some point in her life, something her parents were furious about. Wasn't there? Her father had only hit her once before, hadn't he? Look into my eyes, Malkia. We can fix this. She really was not inclined to open her eyes again, and had reason to believe that this was not her real father. Are they altering my memories to make me remember something that never happened? Creating a single event wasn't the same as convincing her that her entire life had been a lie. Most skilled psychomancers could pull this off, at least for long enough to have the desired effect. But as she tried to turn her magic inward, struggling against whatever mental block they had used to convince her she was magicless, she couldn't find any of the telltale signs of temporary mental alteration. At least, until she reached her childhood memories, where something felt wrong, then immediately faded into normalcy. Malkia vaguely remembered a lesson about how that was the first red flag of a spell cast by someone who wanted it concealed. Straining her untested skill, she pushed at the abnormality, trying to force it into the light before it faded once more. By Akmar's blasted breath! An opposition to profanity left her with some strange substitutes, such as the one that crossed her mind when the inconsistent feeling vanished again. Malkia, won't you answer me? Please answer me. I need to know that this is going to be right. They're too good. My memory's altered. It was by a tested hit, Psychomancer. I don't have the power to stop it. That actually wasn't true, as even a non-Psychomancer could stop any Psychomancer spell with the right thoughts, even though whatever in the torments that meant was something even those who accomplished it couldn't explain. Still, her magic couldn't fix anything. Cautiously, she opened her eyes, wincing when the light hit them until she could barely make out the man who truly did resemble her father. He hugged her. It's going to be okay. We know there's something wrong with you, but we can fix it. We can always fix it. It won't be easy, but the gift of the insane got. Malkia frowned. She didn't know what he was talking about, but she also knew she didn't want to be fixed. Something felt awful, right down to the pit of her stomach. She felt as if she were a freak. She felt as if a disappointment. But she was Malkia, right? She never let the world bring her down, because anything she couldn't prove herself better than was just plain worthy of worship. No one had diminished her, not since that one time. What one time? What had her parents done to her? There was something there, she was certain of it. It wasn't even a creation of the test, but something she had forgotten long ago. Did they try to change me? Making a permanent change in someone's personality is one of the greatest taboos in psychomancy. Stories were passed down to children in awkward, uncomfortable whispers about minor criminals turned to kindness, who madly started cutting down anyone who was unjust. Of children made to enjoy healthier food that killed themselves by overstuffing themselves. Permanent shifts in personality can never fit with the rest, nor stay in their original shape. They always lead to incurable madness. Maybe it was the insane god getting in one last joke. In spite of herself, tears were starting to form at the edge of Malkia's eyes. They did something to me, didn't they? I don't know what, but they did something to me.